5 gleaming black limousines pulled up to Bayview Apartments on a rainy Tuesday morning, drawing shocked stares from residents of the weathered building where Marcus Allen, a debt-ridden plumber with calloused hands and overdue bills, had spent years barely scraping by. Just days earlier, Marcus had been underneath Mrs. Wilson's sink at Saltwater Farm, battling the effects of Havenport's contaminated water supply while nursing his own heartaches and regrets. Now, because of a water purification system he'd built, from salvaged parts in his cramped apartment, representatives from the world's leading foundations were climbing to his door with contracts worth millions. This is the extraordinary story of how one struggling man's determination to help his ailing community led him to create what wealthy corporations and scientific experts couldn't. An affordable solution that would transform not only his own broken life, but bring clean water and hope to countless people around the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months earlier, the copper pipes beneath the sink were so corroded that flakes came off in Marcus Allen's hands as he worked. He adjusted his flashlight, the beam illuminating the rusty interior of Mrs. Wilson's plumbing. The distinctive rotten egg smell told him everything he needed to know. He'd seen it in dozens of homes across Havenport over the past year. How bad? Is it this time, Marcus? Dorothy Wilson stood in the doorway of her kitchen, leaning slightly on her cane. At 78, she retained the sharp blue eyes and direct manner that had made her one of the most respected teachers in Havenport for over 4 decades. Marcus slid out from under the sink, wiping his hands on a rag that had once been white. "Same as the others, Mrs. Wilson. Your pipes are shot. That water from Lighthouse Creek is eating everything from the inside out." Dorothy sighed and lowered herself carefully into a kitchen chair. The farmhouse at Saltwater Farm had been her home for 52 years. She and her late husband Hank had raised their children here, taught them to fish in that very creek. "Atlantic Northeast keeps saying the water's within acceptable parameters," she said, her voice tight with frustration. "Acceptable for what? Rusting pipes? Making people sick?" Marcus stood up, his knees cracking. At 55, his body reminded him daily of the decades he'd spent crawling under houses, climbing into crawl spaces, and wrestling with uncooperative plumbing. "I can replace these sections," he said, "but it's just a band-aid. The real problem's the water itself." He hesitated. "Have you been drinking it?" Dorothy shook her head. "Bottled water only. $20 a week I can barely afford." Marcus nodded. The water crisis was hitting the elderly residents hardest. Fixed incomes stretched thin by the need to buy drinking water, shower at friends' homes outside the affected area, and constantly repair damaged appliances and plumbing. "I'll get these pipes replaced today," Marcus said, calculating in his head how little he could charge her and still afford the parts. "But Dorothy, you should think about that filtration system the company's selling." $1,500? Dorothy snorted with surprising force. "That's 3 months of my medication, Marcus." "Those corporate vultures know exactly what they're doing," Marcus nodded. Atlantic Northeast Water had created the problem with their negligence, then positioned themselves to profit from the solution: expensive filtration systems that most Havenport residents couldn't afford. "Let me make some calls," he said. "Maybe we can get the town to help with—" "Don't bother," Dorothy interrupted. "Mayor Sanders is in their pocket. Richard Blackwell plays golf with half the town council." Richard Blackwell, the CEO of Atlantic Northeast Water, had become Havenport's invisible dictator. His company had bought the water rights to Lighthouse Creek 15 years ago, promising improvements and modernization. Instead, they'd cut corners on treatment, ignored maintenance, and contaminated the water source that had sustained the community for generations. "I'll figure something out," Marcus promised, though he had no idea what. His own financial situation was precarious at best. The stack of unpaid bills in his apartment grew weekly, and his plumbing business barely kept him afloat. You always were a fixer, Marcus Allen, Dorothy said with a small smile, just like your father. Marcus felt the familiar pang at the mention of his dad. Joseph Allen had been Havenport's most trusted plumber for 30 years before Marcus took over the business. His father had taught him everything, not just about pipes and pressure valves, but about taking pride in honest work and always doing right by people. The parts for your sink will cost about 120, Marcus said, but let's call it 60. Marcus, I've got some materials left over from the Anderson job, he lied smoothly. And you made my favorite student pass. Chemistry, remember? I still owe you for that. Dorothy looked like she wanted to argue, but instead nodded reluctantly. Marcus knew she understood the dance. Her pride needed the exchange to feel like a fair transaction, not charity, even if they both knew he'd be paying for those parts out of his own shallow pocket. As Marcus headed to his truck to get his tools, his phone rang. The screen showed Jennifer, his daughter. His heart leapt as it always did, even after their years of strained relations. Jenny, everything okay? Dad, hi. Her voice had the cautious formality she'd adopted since their falling out 3 years ago. I'm in town for a conference next week. Thought maybe we could grab coffee. Marcus leaned against his battered pickup truck, nearly lightheaded with surprise. Of course. Yes, I'd love that. It's a water quality symposium, actually, Jennifer continued. Some of the issues in Havenport caught the attention of my research group. Of course, not a personal visit then. Jennifer was an environmental scientist, brilliant, focused, and still angry at him for the choices he'd made after her mother died. She'd chosen her career partly because of his failings, determined to prevent other families from experiencing what theirs had. That's great, he said, trying to hide his disappointment. The town could use some expert attention. An awkward silence stretched between them. Thursday afternoon? Lobster pot at 2, she finally suggested. I'll be there. He wanted to say more. How much he missed her, how proud he was, how sorry for everything, but he knew from experience that pushing would only make her retreat further. After they disconnected, Marcus stood motionless beside his truck. Jennifer was coming home, his brilliant daughter who'd graduated top of her class at MIT, who now consulted for major environmental organizations, the daughter who could barely look him in the eye after Bobby died. Bobby. His little brother had been the first in Havenport to get sick from the water. The first to die, too, though Atlantic Northeast's lawyers had successfully argued there was no definitive proof linking his rare kidney disease to the water supply. Marcus had been so consumed by grief and rage that he'd neglected everything. LT, his business, his home, and worst of all, his daughter, who was mourning both her uncle and her recently deceased mother. Marcus shook himself from these painful memories and gathered his tools. He had work to do, a sink to fix, promises to keep. Back in Dorothy's kitchen, he worked methodically, replacing the corroded sections of pipe. As he worked, Dorothy sat nearby, telling him about the latest town meeting where residents had once again confronted representatives from Atlantic Northeast Water. Blackwell didn't even bother showing up, she said, disgust evident in her voice. Sent that slick operations manager instead, Cooper. He just repeated the same nonsense about how their tests show the water meets minimum federal standards. Marcus grunted as he tightened a connection. Minimum standards don't account for how the chemicals interact with old pipes. They know that. Sadie Johnson stood up and showed them a jar of water from her tap. Looked like rust with chunks in it. Cooper had the nerve to suggest her home's plumbing was the problem. Marcus slid out from under the sink to check his work. Blaming the victims. Classic corporate move. Then Thomas Green from the local paper asked about the internal memo that got leaked, the one where they discussed the cheaper treatment option even though their own scientists advised against it. What did Cooper say to that? Dorothy's eyes flashed with anger, called it taken out of context and standard business communication. Then threatened the paper with a lawsuit if they printed anything defamatory. Marcus nodded grimly. He'd read that memo when it was anonymously posted online. The language was clear. Atlantic Northeast had chosen profit over safety, with full knowledge of the potential consequences. "There," he said, wiping his hands again. "That should hold for now. But Dorothy, the problem will keep coming back unless the water quality improves." Dorothy pushed herself up from her chair. "I know. But what can people like us do against a corporation that size? They have teams of lawyers. They've bought half the politicians in the state." Marcus had no answer. He packed up his tools, accepted the check for $60 that would barely cover a third of the materials, and headed back to his truck. As he drove through town toward Bayview Apartments, he passed familiar landmarks now tinged with the shadow of the water crisis. Havenport Elementary had installed expensive water coolers in every classroom after 3 children developed severe rashes. The Lobster Pot Diner had signs proudly proclaiming, "We filter all our water," an expense that had nearly bankrupted the owners. The Maritime Heritage Center, once the heart of community activities, had limited its hours after their plumbing suffered catastrophic damage. By the time Marcus reached his apartment, his mind was churning with frustration and half-formed ideas. He climbed the 3 flights of stairs, each step an effort after the long day of physical labor. His apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a cramped living area, a kitchenette, and a bathroom where the shower perpetually dripped despite his best efforts. The rent was still barely manageable, but just barely. He dropped his toolbox by the door and moved to the small table covered with papers. Bills, mostly, and articles he'd printed about water contamination and filtration methods. Marcus had never finished college, dropping out after 2 years of engineering studies when his father got sick and the family business needed him. But he'd never lost his interest in how things worked, the problems that could be solved with the right application of principles and materials. Marcus opened his laptop, an ancient machine that wheezed and protested at being awakened, and began searching again for affordable filtration systems. The commercial options all ran to thousands of dollars, with expensive replacement filters and complicated installation requirements. "There has to be a better way," he muttered to himself, scrolling through page after page of technical specifications and intimidating price tags. Outside his window, the sun was setting over Havenport Harbor. In the fading light, he could see the outline of Atlantic Northeast Water's local treatment facility, a hulking structure that had been inadequately updated and poorly maintained since the company took over. Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. Jennifer was coming next week, his accomplished, brilliant daughter who worked to protect communities like this one, who had practically disowned him after he failed to protect their own family. "I need to do something," he said to the empty apartment. And in that moment, staring at diagrams of commercial water filters with their over-engineered complexity and prohibitive costs, something clicked in Marcus's mind. He grabbed a notebook and began sketching rapidly, his fatigue forgotten, his mind alight with a sudden, clear vision. He could build something better, something affordable, something that would work. Marcus Allen, struggling plumber, former engineering student, and forgotten man of Havenport, picked up a pencil and began to draw the first rough design of a water purification system that would change everything. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The next morning, Marcus woke before his alarm, his mind still buzzing with ideas from the night before. He'd stayed up until nearly 3, sketching designs and researching filtration methods at the Havenport Public Library's online database. His back protested as he rolled out of bed, a reminder of both yesterday's work under Mrs. Wilson's sink and the inadequate mattress he'd been meaning to replace for years. Coffee in hand, he spread his drawings across the small kitchen table. The concept was elegantly simple in theory. A multi-stage filtration system using readily available materials that could be assembled without specialized tools. The commercial systems were overbuilt and overcomplicated, designed with planned obsolescence in mind and proprietary parts that ensured ongoing revenue for the manufacturers. Marcus checked his watch. He had a job scheduled at 10, a leaking shower at the seaside retirement home that couldn't wait. But first, he needed supplies for his prototype. He grabbed his keys and headed out, the spring morning crisp with salt air blowing in from the harbor. Dawson's Hardware and Marine Supply had been a fixture in Havenport for generations. The bell above the door jingled as Marcus entered, nodding to Frank Torres behind the counter. The store smelled of sawdust, metal, and the faint chemical tang of paint. "Morning, Marcus," Frank called. "Bit early for you, isn't it?" "Got a busy day ahead," Marcus replied, already moving toward the plumbing supplies. "Need a few things for a special project." He filled his basket methodically, activated carbon from water filters he could break down, fine mesh screens, food-grade plastic, containers, basic PVC fittings. As he worked, his mind refined the design, making mental adjustments. Frank raised his eyebrows at the unusual collection of items as Marcus placed them on the counter. "Something interesting in the works?" Marcus hesitated, then decided there was no harm in sharing. "Trying to make a water filter, something affordable for folks getting hit by this Atlantic Northeast mess." Frank's expression sobered. "About time somebody did something. My sister over on Harbor Street can't even wash her white laundry anymore. Everything comes out with rust stains." As Frank rang up the purchases, Marcus did a quick mental calculation of his bank balance. The total would leave him short for the electric bill again, but he could manage if the retirement home job paid promptly. "Listen," Frank said, bagging the items. "I've got some damaged PVC pipe in the back. Customer returned it, but it's still usable. Want it? No charge." Marcus started to decline. Pride was sometimes all he had left, but practicality won. "Out. That would help a lot, actually. Thanks, Frank. We're all in this together," Frank replied, disappearing into the stockroom. He returned with an armful of PVC sections. "My cousin's kid ended up in Havenport Community Hospital last month. Horrible stomach infection. Doctor wouldn't say it officially, but off the record, told them to stop drinking the tap water immediately." This was a story Marcus had heard repeatedly over the past year, doctors unwilling to directly attribute illnesses to the water supply for fear of legal repercussions from Atlantic Northeast, but privately warning patients. "I'm hoping this might help," Marcus said, taking the offered materials. "No promises, but worth a try." "Let me know how it turns out," Frank said. "And Marcus, put it on your account. Pay when that retirement home check comes through." Relief washed over Marcus. "I appreciate that, Frank, I really do." Back at his apartment, Marcus carefully unloaded his supplies. He had 2 hours before he needed to leave for the seaside retirement home job. Enough time to start assembling the first stage of his prototype. He worked with the focused precision that had made him a respected plumber despite his financial struggles. His hands, marked with calluses and old scars, moved confidently as he cut, connected, and sealed. The design taking physical form was simpler than commercial systems, but addressed the specific contaminants present in Havenport's water. When it was time to leave, Marcus reluctantly set aside his half-finished creation. The shower repair at Seaside Retirement Home took longer than expected. The problem extended deeper into the wall than initially apparent. By the time he finished, it was late afternoon, and Director Williams insisted he stay for coffee. "We're grateful you could come so quickly," she said, handing him a steaming mug in the staff break room. "We've had 3 residents with skin irritations from the water already." "The filtration system you installed last year isn't working?" Marcus asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. It works, but it's not designed for whatever's in our water now, and the company wants $8,000 for an upgrade." She shook her head in frustration. "Our budget's already stretched to breaking." Marcus thought of his prototype sitting on his kitchen table. "I might have something that could help, but it's still in development." Director Williams looked at him with sudden interest. "What kind of something?" "A filtration system. Simple, affordable. I'm designing it specifically for what's in Havenport's water." "Marcus Allen," she said, studying him with new appreciation, "you never mentioned you were an inventor." He felt heat rise in his face. "I'm not really, just trying to solve a problem." "Well, when you've got something ready to test, we'd be interested. Can't promise anything, but..." She shrugged meaningfully. The possibility of a real installation, a genuine test case, energized Marcus. He completed his paperwork quickly, accepted payment for the shower repair, and headed straight back to his apartment, stopping only to pick up a sandwich he ate while driving. For the next several days, Marcus worked every spare moment on his filtration system. He took only the most urgent plumbing jobs, focusing instead on refining his design. The prototype evolved through 3 iterations, each simpler and more effective than the last. He tested water samples before and after filtration using a basic water testing kit he'd ordered online. The results were promising. His system wasn't certified to FDA standards. That would require expensive testing he couldn't afford, but it was effectively removing the sediment, heavy metals, and organic compounds that plagued Havenport's water supply. On Thursday morning, Marcus cleaned his apartment thoroughly, took a long shower, and put on his least worn button-down shirt. The meeting with Jennifer weighed heavily on his mind. 3 years of minimal contact, mostly holiday texts and brief phone calls, had created a distance that felt almost insurmountable. The Lobster Pot Diner was moderately busy when Marcus arrived. He chose a booth near the window and waited, watching the door with increasing anxiety as the minutes ticked past 2 o'clock. At 2:17, just as he was beginning to think she wouldn't come, the door opened and Jennifer walked in. At 28, she was the image of her mother, the same dark hair, the same determined set to her jaw. She'd inherited Marcus's eyes, though, and seeing that familiar blue gaze directed at him after so long made his throat tighten with emotion. "Dad," she said simply, sliding into the booth across from him. "Jenny," he replied, resisting the urge to reach for her hand. "You look good, professional." She was dressed in a tailored blazer over a simple blouse, her conference badge still hanging around her neck. "Thanks for meeting me." The waitress arrived, saving them from the awkward silence that threatened. They both ordered coffee, and Marcus added a slice of blueberry pie to share, Jennifer's favorite since childhood. "How's the conference?" he asked when the waitress departed. "Enlightening and disturbing." Jennifer placed her phone on the table, her fingers tapping it nervously. "The situation in Havenport is worse than I realized. The data from Lighthouse Creek shows contamination levels that should have triggered federal intervention months ago." Marcus nodded. "Atlantic Northeast has friends in high places. We've seen this pattern before. Rural communities with limited resources targeted by corporations that cut corners on safety." Her voice took on the passionate edge he remembered from her college days. "But this is personal. This is home." The waitress returned with their order. Marcus waited until she left before asking, "Is your research group planning some kind of action?" Jennifer hesitated, studying him. "Potentially. We're gathering data for a possible class action lawsuit. But it's complicated." "Because of Uncle Bobby," Marcus said quietly. The mention of his brother's name hung between them. Bobby's death had been the breaking point, not just for Marcus's faith in the system, but for his relationship with his daughter. Partly, Jennifer admitted the company's legal team successfully argued against including his case in the previous lawsuit. They'll use that precedent again. What she didn't say was equally clear. Marcus's emotional testimony and subsequent confrontation with Richard Blackwell had damaged the previous case's credibility. His grief-fueled rage had played directly into Atlantic Northeast's legal strategy, helping them portray the plaintiffs as irrational and their claims as exaggerated. "I made mistakes," Marcus said simply. "I know that." Jennifer stirred her coffee, not meeting his eyes. "We all did." After a pause, she continued, "Mom had just died. Uncle Bobby was sick. It was a terrible time." Marcus nodded, grateful for this small acknowledgement. After his wife, Sarah's, sudden death from an aneurysm, Bobby's declining health had become Marcus's obsessive focus. He'd been convinced the water was responsible long before doctors confirmed it, and his campaign against Atlantic Northeast had consumed him. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you needed me," he said. Jennifer looked up, surprise briefly crossing her face at the directness of his apology. She nodded slightly but didn't respond. "What can I do to help?" Marcus asked, changing the subject to safer ground. "With your research, I mean." Jennifer seemed to come to a decision. "Actually, there is something. We need more comprehensive water samples, not just from municipal access points, but from homes across town. Different neighborhoods, different types of plumbing systems." "I can do that," Marcus said immediately. "I'm in homes all over Havenport every week. It would need to be methodical, following proper collection protocols." She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder. "I brought sampling kits and instructions." Marcus felt a surge of pride that she had planned this, had thought of how he could contribute meaningfully. "I'll do it right, Jenny. You can count on me." She nodded, some of the professional veneer slipping. "I know, Dad." They spent the next 30 minutes reviewing the sampling procedures. Jennifer was thorough, and Marcus listened attentively, asking questions that made her raise her eyebrows in surprise at his technical understanding. "You still know your stuff," she commented as they finished the last of the pie. Marcus hesitated, then decided to take a chance. "Actually, I've been working on something, a filtration system." Jennifer's expression shifted to one of professional interest. "What kind of system?" "Simple, affordable, designed specifically for Havenport's contamination profile." He pulled out his phone and showed her photos of his prototype. "It's not fancy, but initial tests show it's removing the major contaminants." Jennifer studied the images with growing interest, asking pointed technical questions that Marcus answered confidently. As he explained the multi-stage filtration process, he saw her professional assessment gradually give way to genuine admiration. "This is actually impressive, Dad," she said finally. "You've addressed the specific chemical compounds in our water supply with targeted filtration methods." "It's still a prototype," he cautioned, warmed by her praise. "Needs more testing." "Have you documented your results, the before and after analysis?" "Basic stuff only. I can't afford the comprehensive testing needed for certification." Jennifer was quiet for a moment, thinking. "My lab at the university could run those tests, if you're interested." The offer hung in the air between them. Not just professional assistance, but a tentative bridge across the chasm that had separated them. "I'd appreciate that," Marcus said carefully. "If you have the time." "I can make time." Jennifer glanced at her watch and sighed. "Speaking of which, I need to get back to the conference. Panel discussion at 4. They settled the bill, Jennifer insisting on paying despite Marcus's protest, and walked out together. On the sidewalk outside the lobster pot, they faced each other awkwardly. "Thank you for the water sampling help," Jennifer said formally. "Happy to do it." Marcus hesitated, then added, "It was good to see you, Jenny." Her professional mask slipped, just slightly. "You too, Dad." She turned to go, then surprised him by turning back and giving him a quick, stiff hug before hurrying away down the street toward the conference center. Marcus stood watching her go, a complex mixture of emotions washing over him. The hug had been brief and uncomfortable, nothing like the easy affection they'd once shared, but it was something. A start. His phone buzzed with a text message from Dorothy Wilson. "Sink acting up again. Any chance you can look at it? No rush." Marcus texted back that he'd come by that evening, then headed toward his truck. As he drove back to Bayview Apartments, his mind worked on two parallel tracks, refining his filtration design and figuring out a way to deserve his daughter's forgiveness. At his apartment, Marcus added the water sampling equipment to his plumbing toolkit, then returned to his prototype. With Jennifer's potential lab testing in mind, he began documenting his process more rigorously, creating a proper testing log with times, measurements, and observed results. The evening found him back at Saltwater Farm, fixing Dorothy's sink again. As he worked, he mentioned his filtration project. "So you're really doing it?" Dorothy asked, impressed. "Creating an alternative to those overpriced corporate systems?" "Trying to," Marcus replied. "No guarantees it'll work at scale, but if it does..." Dorothy didn't finish the thought, but the implication was clear. If it worked, it could change things for Havenport. "My daughter's going to help with the testing," Marcus added, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "She's got access to university equipment that can verify if it's really safe." Dorothy smiled knowingly. "Jennifer's back in town? That's wonderful, Marcus." "For a conference," he clarified. "But yes, we had coffee today. It was a step in the right direction. One step at a time," Dorothy said wisely. "For the water filter and for family, both need patience and persistence." As Marcus drove home later that night, Dorothy's words echoed in his mind. Patience and persistence. The qualities that had made him a good plumber might just help him rebuild what he'd lost, both with his daughter and, perhaps, with his community. Back at his apartment, Marcus worked late into the night, refining his design with renewed purpose. Tomorrow, he would begin collecting water samples for Jennifer's research, and soon, he hoped, his filtration system would be ready for real-world testing. What Marcus couldn't know, as he finally fell into exhausted sleep, surrounded by diagrams and parts, was that his invention would soon catch the attention of people far beyond Havenport, people with the power to either elevate his creation to national prominence or bury it completely to protect their profits. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus established a new routine. Mornings were dedicated to essential plumbing jobs, the work that paid his bills, however barely. Afternoons involved collecting water samples from homes across Havenport, carefully following Jennifer's protocols. Evenings and late nights were consumed by his filtration system. Now in its 5th iteration, the apartment had transformed into a makeshift laboratory. His kitchen table disappeared beneath testing equipment, notebooks, and water samples. The living room held progressively improved versions of his filtration prototype, each labeled meticulously. For the first time in years, Marcus felt fully engaged, his mind sharp with purpose. Jennifer had returned to her university position after the conference, but called every other day for updates. Their conversations remained primarily technical, but occasionally personal details slipped through the professional cracks. A colleague who reminded Jennifer of her mother, a customer whose stubbornness made Marcus think of his daughter. Small connections, tentatively rebuilt. On a drizzly Tuesday morning, Marcus arrived at Seaside Retirement Home with his latest prototype, version 5.3, secured carefully in the back of his truck. Director Williams met him at the service. Entrance, her expression a mixture of hope and skepticism. "I appreciate you bringing this for us to see, Marcus," she said, leading him through the building's maze of corridors. "But I want to be clear. We can't implement anything without proper certification." "I understand," Marcus assured her. "This is just a demonstration." My daughter's university lab has verified it removes the specific contaminants in our water, but we're still working on formal testing. The maintenance room was cramped but orderly. The expensive commercial filtration system installed the previous year dominated one wall, an imposing arrangement of stainless steel and digital displays that, according to Director Williams, was increasingly ineffective against Havenport's deteriorating water quality. Marcus set up his prototype beside it, a stark contrast in its simplified design using readily available materials. The maintenance supervisor, a stocky man named Powell, watched with undisguised skepticism. "That's supposed to replace this $20,000 system?" he asked, gesturing to the commercial unit. "Not replace," Marcus corrected. "Supplement and potentially provide a more affordable alternative for residents who can't afford the commercial home units." He connected his system to the water supply line, bypassing the retirement home's main system for the demonstration. In a glass, he collected water directly from the main line, cloudy with a faint yellowish tint. Then he collected water filtered through his system. The difference was immediately visible. The filtered water was clear, without the telltale discoloration. Director Williams leaned forward, eyebrows raised in surprise. "May I?" she asked, reaching for both glasses. Marcus nodded, trying to contain his nervous energy. Director Williams examined both samples carefully, then sniffed each one. "The filtered one doesn't have that sulfur smell," she noted. "The test results from my daughter's lab confirm it's removing the heavy metals, sediment, and organic compounds," Marcus explained. "Not just masking the symptoms, but addressing the actual contaminants." Supervisor Powell still looked unconvinced. "How often do the filters need changing? What's the maintenance cost?" "That's the best part," Marcus said, warming to his subject. "The primary filtration media lasts about 3 months under normal use. The secondary carbon filter needs replacement every 6 weeks, but it costs less than $20. The entire system parts total under $200, compared to thousands for the commercial units." Director Williams was nodding slowly. "And it's designed specifically for our local contamination profile?" "Exactly. Commercial systems are designed to address a wide range of possible contaminants. This targets exactly what's in Havenport's water, which makes it more efficient and less expensive." Powell crossed his arms. "No digital monitoring, though. No way to verify it's working properly." "Actually," Marcus countered, reaching into his toolkit, "there is." He produced a simple testing kit. "These strips change color based on contamination levels. Takes 30 seconds, costs about 50 cents per test." By the time the demonstration concluded, Director Williams was cautiously optimistic. "I'll need to consult with our board and legal team, of course, but if your daughter's lab can provide official documentation of the testing results, she's working on it," Marcus promised. "And if you're interested, I'd like to install a test unit in a controlled location for a trial period. No charge?" The offer was accepted, and Marcus left with something he hadn't felt in years: professional validation. As he loaded his equipment back into his truck, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. "Hello, is this Marcus Allen?" a woman's voice asked when he answered. "Yes, it is. My name is Sadie Johnson. Dorothy Wilson gave me your number. I'm with the Havenport Community Action Group, and we'd like to talk to you about your water filtration system." Marcus paused, surprised. "How did you hear about that?" "Word travels fast in small towns, Mr. Allen. Dorothy mentioned you've created something that might help people who can't afford those overpriced corporate filters. We're having a meeting tonight at the Maritime Heritage Center. Would you be willing to come and tell us about your work?" Marcus hesitated. The Community Action Group had been vocal against Atlantic Northeast water, organizing protests and petition drives. Getting involved publicly might complicate things with Jennifer's research and the potential retirement home installation. "This wouldn't be a protest or anything political," Sadie added, sensing his hesitation. "Just neighbors helping neighbors. Find solutions. 7 o'clock if you can make it. I'll be there, Marcus decided. If his system could help more people, he had an obligation to share it. That evening, Marcus arrived at the Maritime Heritage Center with his prototype and testing materials. He expected a small gathering, but was stunned to find the meeting room packed with nearly 50 Havenport residents. He recognized many faces, customers, neighbors, people he'd known his entire life in the close-knit coastal community. Dorothy Wilson waved from the front row, seated beside an elderly black woman, whom Marcus assumed was Sadie Johnson. As Marcus made his way to the front, carrying his filtration system, conversations hushed and attention focused on him. "Thank you all for coming," Sadie began, her voice carrying surprising authority for her small frame. "Most of you know Marcus. Alan, he's been fixing our plumbing for years, and now it seems he's working on fixing our water too." Marcus set up his demonstration on the table provided, acutely aware of the audience watching his every move. Public speaking had never been his strength. He preferred working quietly with his hands to explaining things to a crowd. "It's still in development," he began, his voice initially uncertain before gaining strength, "but the basic principle is straightforward. Our water in Havenport has specific contaminants, primarily heavy metals, sulfur compounds, and industrial chemicals. From Atlantic Northeast's inadequate treatment, commercial filtration systems are expensive because they're designed to handle many different potential contaminants. This system targets exactly what's in our water." As he demonstrated the filtration process, showing before and after samples, the audience's skepticism gradually gave way to interest. Questions followed, practical concerns about installation, maintenance, and cost that Marcus answered honestly. "How do we know it's really safe?" asked a young mother holding a toddler. "No offense, but you're a plumber, not a scientist." "Fair question," Marcus acknowledged. "My daughter is an environmental scientist at Eastern University. Her laboratory has been testing the output water and documenting the results. We're working on getting proper certification, but that process takes time and money." "Your daughter?" someone called out. "Jennifer Allen? The one who spoke at the town council meeting last year about water quality regulations?" Marcus nodded, surprised they remembered. "Yes, that's her." This connection seemed to lend him credibility. The questions became more enthusiastic, less doubtful. By the time the demonstration concluded, several people were asking how soon they could get systems for their homes. "It's not ready for distribution yet," Marcus cautioned. "But I'm looking for a few households to serve as test locations, different types of homes, different plumbing setups." Hands shot up around the room. Sadie Johnson brought the meeting back to order. "Let's be methodical about this," she suggested. "Those interested can sign up, and Marcus can select sites that give the best cross-section of our community." As the formal meeting broke up, people gathered around Marcus's table, examining the system more closely. Dorothy made her way to his side, beaming with barely contained pride. "I told you people would be interested," she said. "This could really help Havenport." Marcus was about to respond when he noticed a man at the back of the room, quietly observing. Without approaching, even in casual clothes, Daniel Cooper, operations manager at Atlantic Northeast Water, was unmistakable with his tailored appearance and calculating gaze. Cooper nodded slightly when he caught Marcus looking, then turned and left without a word. "Was that who I think it was?" Dorothy asked, following Marcus's gaze. "Daniel Cooper," Marcus confirmed, a knot forming in his stomach. "Atlantic Northeast is aware of us now." "Good," Dorothy said firmly. "Let them worry for a change." The following morning, Marcus was installing his test unit at the home of Emma Poster, a young single mother whose daughter had developed rashes from bathing in the contaminated water. As he worked, his phone rang. Jennifer calling from her university office. "Dad, did you do a public demonstration last night?" she asked without preamble. Marcus paused, caught off guard by her tone. "Yes, at the Maritime Heritage Center. How did you hear about it?" It's all over the local Havenport social media pages. Someone recorded your presentation. Is that a problem? Jennifer sighed. It complicates things. We're still in the research phase. The testing protocols aren't complete. You're making claims about efficacy that haven't been fully verified. I was clear about that, Marcus defended. I told everyone. It's still in development that we're working on certification. Atlantic Northeast has their legal team reviewing the video, Jennifer continued. One of my colleagues has contacts there. They're considering a cease and desist order, claiming you're distributing potentially harmful filtration devices without proper authorization. Marcus felt a flash of anger. Potentially harmful? Their water is what's harmful. We have the test. Results to prove my system improves the water quality. Preliminary results, Jennifer corrected. Dad, I support what you're doing, but we need to be methodical. Atlantic Northeast has resources we don't have. They can bury us in legal challenges if we're not careful. The "we" didn't escape Marcus's notice. Jennifer was aligning herself with his cause, despite her professional caution. What should we do? He asked, deferring to her expertise. Document everything meticulously. Every test, every installation, every result. We need to build an unassailable case. And Dad, be careful, these people play hardball. After they disconnected, Marcus continued the installation with renewed determination. If Atlantic Northeast was concerned enough to monitor his activities, it meant his system posed a genuine threat to their profitable monopoly on clean water. That afternoon, Marcus met Thomas Green, the local reporter from the Havenport Weekly. At the Lobster Pot Diner, Thomas had contacted him after seeing the social media buzz about the community meeting. I'd like to do a feature story, Thomas explained, recorder placed between them on the table. Local plumber creates affordable solution to town's water crisis, human interest with practical implications. Marcus considered his response carefully, remembering Jennifer's warning. I'm happy to discuss the water issues affecting Havenport, but I need to emphasize that my filtration system is still in the testing phase. We're following proper scientific validation procedures through a university laboratory. Thomas nodded, making notes. That's part of what makes this interesting. The collaboration between practical tradesman father and scientific expert daughter. Reconciliation through shared purpose, Marcus shifted uncomfortably. The personal aspects aren't relevant to the water situation. Human interest, Marcus, Thomas insisted gently. Readers connect with people, not just technical solutions. Your brother's death from kidney disease linked to the contaminated water gives this story emotional resonance. The mention of Bobby sent a familiar pang through Marcus. I'd rather focus on the facts. Atlantic Northeast cut corners on water treatment. People are getting sick. The company's solution is unaffordable for most residents. I'm working on an alternative. Thomas interviewed him for nearly an hour, eventually persuading Marcus to be photographed with his prototype. Before leaving, the reporter asked one final question. Atlantic Northeast is planning a public forum next week to address community concerns. Will you be attending? I hadn't planned on it, Marcus admitted. You should. This story runs the day before. It might change the dynamic of their carefully orchestrated PR event. As Marcus drove home, his mind churned with conflicting thoughts. The increased attention brought opportunities to help more people, but also risked provoking Atlantic Northeast into aggressive countermeasures. Jennifer was right about the need for caution and documentation. He arrived at Bayview Apartments to find a white envelope taped to his door. No postmark, no return address, just his name typed on the front. Inside was a brief note. Meet me at Harbor View Park, North Bench, 7 p.m. tonight. Information you need. Come alone. Marcus stared at the unsigned note, suspicion warring with curiosity. It could be a trap, an intimidation tactic from Atlantic Northeast, or it could be a potential ally with valuable information. After deliberating for an hour, Marcus decided to go. Harborview Park was a public place, well lit and usually occupied by evening walkers and families. If this was an attempt to intimidate him, he preferred to face it directly rather than wait for the next move. As dusk settled over Havenport, Marcus walked to the park, the tang of salt air mingling with the approaching fog rolling in from the harbor. The north bench faced the water, partially obscured from the main path by ornamental shrubs. As he approached, he saw a solitary figure already seated there, a middle-aged man in a business suit, watching the darkening horizon. The man turned. As Marcus approached, his face becoming visible in the park lighting. Marcus stopped short, recognition hitting him like a physical blow. It was Richard Blackwell himself, CEO of Atlantic Northeast Water, and the man Marcus had publicly blamed for his brother's death 3 years earlier. "Mr. Allen," Richard Blackwell said calmly, as if this meeting were the most natural thing in the world. "Thank you for coming." Marcus remained standing, adrenaline coursing through his system. The last time he'd seen Blackwell had been in the courthouse 3 years ago, after the judge dismissed the case linking Bobby's death to Atlantic Northeast's water. Marcus had lost control, shouting accusations that had been captured by local news cameras, accusations that had undermined the remaining plaintiff's credibility. "You left me an anonymous note," Marcus said, keeping his voice level with effort. "Why the secrecy?" Blackwell gestured to the empty spot beside him on the bench. "Please, sit. I'd rather this conversation not attract attention." After a moment's hesitation, Marcus sat, maintaining as much distance as the bench allowed. Up close, he noticed that Blackwell looked older than in his corporate photos. Lines of stress around his eyes, silver threading more prominently through his dark hair. "I've been following your work on this filtration system," Blackwell began, looking out over the harbor rather than directly at Marcus. "Ingenious design, simple, effective, affordable, exactly what our engineers said couldn't be done." Marcus remained silent, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Daniel Cooper wants to pursue legal action against you," Blackwell continued. "Cease and desist orders, claims of potential liability, the usual corporate defense playbook." "And you're here to threaten me personally?" Marcus asked, tension evident in his voice. Blackwell turned to face him, expression unreadable in the fading light. "Actually, I'm here to make you an offer. Atlantic Northeast Water will purchase your design for $300,000. You'll sign over all rights and agree to a non-disclosure agreement." The amount hit Marcus like a physical blow. $300,000 would erase his debts, secure his retirement, maybe even allow him to help Jennifer with her student loans. It was life-changing money for a man who checked his bank balance before buying groceries. "Why would you pay that much to shelve a design made from hardware store parts?" Marcus asked, suspicion overriding his momentary shock. A thin smile crossed Blackwell's face. "Who said anything about shelving it? We develop it, refine it, eventually bring it to market as part of our premium home solution line. At 10 times the cost and half the effectiveness," Marcus replied, "turning a solution into another profit center. That's business, Mr. Allen." Blackwell shrugged. "Your alternative is fighting a legal battle you can't afford against a company with very deep pockets. Even with your daughter's university connection, you'll be buried in injunctions and court dates before you can help a single household." Marcus studied the harbor, buying time to organize his thoughts. Fishing boats were returning for the evening, their lights bobbing in the growing darkness. "Why are you making this offer personally?" he finally asked. "Why not have your lawyers handle it?" Blackwell was silent for a moment. "Your brother," he said finally. "I knew him, you know. Not well, but we served on the hospital fundraising committee together before he got sick." The mention of Bobby from this man's mouth stirred Marcus's anger anew. "Don't talk about him. He was a good man," Blackwell continued, ignoring Marcus's tension. Principled like you. He paused. I didn't know about the contamination when I took over as CEO. By the time our internal testing showed the problems, the cost-cutting decisions had been made by my predecessor, and the board was committed to the path. You could have changed. In course, Marcus said bitterly. You chose profits over people. It's more complicated than that, Blackwell replied, though without much conviction. Corporate governance, shareholder obligations, regulatory frameworks that actually incentivize opacity. He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. But I didn't come here to make excuses. I came with an offer that benefits us both. $300,000 to walk away, Marcus summarized flatly. To be properly compensated for your innovation, Blackwell corrected. Think about it. You'd be free of debt, your daughter's research could continue without corporate interference, and eventually a version of your system would reach the market. While people in Havenport continue drinking contaminated water because they can't afford your premium solution, Marcus added. Blackwell checked his watch and stood. The offer stands for 72 hours. After that, I can't control what our legal department might do. He handed Marcus a business card with a private number handwritten on the back. Call when you've decided. As Blackwell walked away, Marcus remained on the bench, the card heavy in his hand. The CEO had calculated his offer precisely, enough money to be life-changing for Marcus personally, but a fraction of what Atlantic Northeast would save by controlling and monetizing the technology rather than being forced to clean up their water supply properly. Marcus sat there long after Blackwell disappeared, watching the harbor lights and weighing impossible choices. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Marcus's mood. He'd barely slept, the numbers dancing in his head. $300,000 versus the cost to the community if he sold out. By dawn, he knew he needed advice from the one person whose judgment he truly trusted, despite their complicated history. Jennifer answered on the fourth ring, her voice still thick with sleep. Dad, is everything okay? It's not even 7. I'm sorry to call so early, Marcus said. Something's happened. Can we meet in person? Jennifer was immediately alert. What's wrong? Did Atlantic Northeast contact you? Yes. Richard Blackwell. Himself. It's better if we discuss it face to face. They arranged to meet at the Havenport Public Library at 9, neutral territory with private study rooms. In the meantime, Marcus had a scheduled installation at Sadie Johnson's home, where he went through the motions mechanically, his mind elsewhere. Sadie, perceptive as always, noticed his distraction. You seem troubled today, Marcus. Anything I can help with? He considered confiding in her, but decided against it until he'd spoken with Jennifer. Just didn't sleep well. Nothing to worry about. The article about your filter comes out tomorrow, Sadie mentioned as he finished the installation. Thomas sent me a preview. It's going to make quite a splash right before Atlantic Northeast's public forum. Marcus nodded, the timing suddenly seeming ominous given Blackwell's 72-hour deadline. I'll be interested to see what he wrote. The Havenport Public Library was quiet when Marcus arrived. Just a few retirees browsing newspapers and 2 mothers with young children in the children's section. He secured a study room, then waited anxiously until Jennifer appeared, looking professional in a blazer despite the weekend. What happened? She asked without preamble as soon as the door closed behind her. Marcus recounted the meeting with Blackwell in detail, including the offer and deadline. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly troubled. 300,000, she repeated when he finished. That's serious money. It's a bribe, Marcus said flatly. A buyout, Jennifer corrected. Standard practice for innovative technology. And he's right about their legal resources. They could tie us up in court for years. Marcus studied his daughter's face. Are you saying I should take it? Jennifer paced the small room. I'm saying we should consider all angles. With that money, you could pay off your debts, secure your future. Maybe even fund further research through proper channels. While Atlantic Northeast continues supplying contaminated water to people who can't afford their premium solutions, Marcus pointed out, the company isn't going away, Dad. And they're not going to suddenly develop a conscience because we refuse. Their offer, Marcus leaned back, suddenly seeing the situation with painful clarity. You think I should take the money? Jennifer stopped pacing and met his eyes directly. I think you should make the decision that's best for you. You've spent years struggling financially, partly because of what happened with Uncle Bobby and the company. Maybe this is a form of justice, getting something back from them by selling out the community. The disappointment in his voice was unmistakable. Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. That's not fair. I've been working on water quality issues for years, but I'm also realistic about how change happens. Sometimes you have to work within the system, or sometimes you have to challenge it, Marcus countered. That's what your mother always believed. The mention of her mother visibly affected Jennifer. Sarah Allen had been an environmental activist decades before it was mainstream, teaching her daughter to stand up against corporate interests that prioritize profit over people's health. Mom also believed in picking battles you could win, Jennifer said quietly. They fell silent, the gulf between them widening again, despite the recent progress in their relationship. Marcus realized they were approaching the same problem from fundamentally different perspectives, his grassroots, immediate solution versus her systemic, institutional approach. The lab results came back on the latest version of your system, Jennifer said finally, changing the subject. It's removing 96% of the harmful contaminants. That's better than most commercial systems. Pride momentarily displaced Marcus's concern. Is that enough for certification? Not quite. We need consistency across multiple production units, not just your handmade prototype, but it's compelling evidence. She hesitated. Evidence that could be part of a larger research initiative if properly funded. Marcus understood her implication. Take Blackwell's money and use it to continue the work through official channels. It was a reasonable compromise, the kind of pragmatic solution Jennifer had always favored. I need to think, Marcus said. The deadline's tomorrow night. Jennifer nodded, then reached into her bag and pulled out a file folder. These are the complete test results. Whatever you decide, you should have all the information. As they prepared to leave, Jennifer paused. Dad, I know we see this differently, but I respect whatever choice you make. I just want you to consider all the possibilities, including the ones that protect your future. Marcus nodded, touched by her concern despite their disagreement. I'll call you tomorrow, before I do anything. They parted outside the library, the physical distance between them reflecting the philosophical one that remained despite their recent rapprochement. Marcus spent the afternoon walking the streets of Havenport, past familiar landmarks now shadowed by the water crisis. Havenport Elementary, where water fountains had been replaced with bottled water stations at parents' expense. The Maritime Heritage Center, operating on reduced hours because the contaminated water damaged their plumbing. Harborview Park, where signs warned against water contact in the once popular wading pool. His wandering eventually brought him to Saltwater Farm, where he found Dorothy Wilson on her porch, despite the drizzle, wrapped in a thick sweater and watching the rolling fields that stretched toward the distant shore. Twice in 1 week, she noted as he approached. I must rate special attention. I needed some advice, Marcus admitted, settling into the wicker chair beside her. From someone with perspective. Dorothy raised an eyebrow. I've got 7 decades of perspective. What's troubling you? Marcus explained the situation. Blackwell's offer, Jennifer's cautious suggestion to consider it, his own conflicted feelings. Dorothy listened attentively, occasionally nodding or frowning as the story unfolded. $300,000, she mused when he finished. Not enough to change the world, but enough to change your world. That's the problem, Marcus agreed. It solves my problems, but leaves everyone else's intact. Dorothy was quiet for a moment, watching the misty fields. You know, Hank and I were offered a lot of money for this farm 20 years ago. Developers wanted to build vacation homes with ocean views, would have set us up very comfortably for retirement. But you didn't sell, Marcus noted. No, because this land wasn't just ours, it was part of the community, had been for generations. She turned to face Marcus directly. Some things belong to more than just ourselves, even when we created them. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the parallel she was drawing. Whatever you decide, Dorothy continued, make sure you can wake up the next morning and still respect the person in the mirror. Money can't buy back self-respect once it's gone. As evening approached, Marcus returned to his apartment at Bayview to find Thomas Green waiting outside his door. Sorry to ambush you, the reporter said, but the story runs tomorrow morning, and I wanted to verify a few last details. Inside, Thomas showed Marcus the draft article on his laptop. The headline read, Local plumber's invention could solve Havenport water crisis. Atlantic Northeast's expensive solution challenged by affordable alternative. It's going to be our front page, Thomas explained, timing it right before their public forum should force them to address your system directly. As Marcus reviewed the article, a crucial realization dawned. The publicity from tomorrow's newspaper would fundamentally change the dynamics of Blackwell's offer. Once the story broke, the company's quiet buyout option would transform into a public relations problem if revealed. Thomas finished his fact-checking and left, unaware of the strategic advantage he'd just provided. Alone again, Marcus stared at Blackwell's business card, turning it over in his hands as he considered his options with this new leverage. His phone rang, Dorothy calling to check on him after their conversation. I know what I'm going to do, Marcus told her before she could even ask, but I need your help spreading the word for a meeting tomorrow night. After the newspaper comes out, Dorothy asked, quick as ever. Exactly. I want as many people as possible at Atlantic Northeast's public forum. I think it's time Havenport showed them exactly what we think of their acceptable parameters and premium solutions. After they hung up, Marcus called Jennifer, explaining his plan. There was a long silence after he finished. That's risky, she finally said. You're essentially declaring public war on a corporation with vastly more resources. I know, but it's the right thing to do. Another pause then. What do you need from me? Relief washed over Marcus. Despite their different approaches, Jennifer was still willing to stand with him. Your test results, all the documentation, and if possible, your presence at the forum. I'll be there, she promised. And Dad, I'm proud of you. Those 4 words, so simple and yet so long absent from their relationship, gave Marcus the final confirmation he needed. Picking up his phone again, he dialed the number on Blackwell's card, knowing that the call he was about to make would irreversibly alter the course of his life, for better or worse. Richard Blackwell answered on the second ring. I was hoping you'd call, Mr. Allen. I've made my decision, Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. I'm declining your offer. A pause. I see. May I ask why? $300,000 would solve a lot of problems for you. While creating more for my community, Marcus replied, I didn't build this system to get rich. I built it to help people who can't afford your company's solutions. Noble, Blackwell said, his tone unreadable, but perhaps short-sighted. Our legal department will what? Marcus interrupted. Sue me for creating a water filter from commercially available parts. Try to discredit the university laboratory results confirming it works? Or maybe threaten the newspaper that's running a front-page story about it tomorrow morning? Another longer pause. Tomorrow's paper? Thomas Green's article? Front page, Marcus confirmed, feeling a surge of confidence. Right before your public forum. Imagine how it would look if people learned you tried to buy me out rather than clean up your water. "This is a mistake, Marcus," Blackwell said, dropping the formality of Mr. Allen. "We could have worked together." "No. You wanted to control the solution rather than fix the problem." Marcus took a deep breath. "I'll see you at the forum tomorrow night." After hanging up, Marcus sat in the sudden silence of his apartment, trembling slightly with adrenaline. He'd just refused life-changing money and challenged one of the most powerful men in the state. There would be consequences, but for the first time in years, he felt truly aligned with his principles. That night, Marcus slept surprisingly well. When he awoke, it was to his phone buzzing with messages and missed calls. Zeitschrift Weekly had published Thomas's article online at midnight, and by breakfast time, it had been shared hundreds of times across social media and local news sites. The headline had been modified slightly from the draft. Havenport Plumber creates affordable water solution. Atlantic Northeast's expensive filters. Outperformed by local innovation. Beneath it was a photo of Marcus with his filtration system, looking more confident than he remembered feeling during the shoot. Thomas had written a compelling narrative, contrasting Marcus's practical approach with Atlantic Northeast's profit-driven strategy. He'd included quotes from Sadie Johnson and Director Williams from Seaside Retirement Home, along with preliminary findings from Jennifer's laboratory testing. The article ended by noting Atlantic Northeast's scheduled public forum that evening. Marcus's phone rang as he was scanning the online comments. It was Jennifer. "The article is everywhere," she said without preamble. "My department chair just called. The university's legal team is reviewing our involvement to make sure we're protected if Atlantic Northeast retaliates." "Will this cause problems for you?" Marcus asked, suddenly concerned. "Nothing I can't handle," Jennifer assured him. "Actually, some colleagues from Environmental Justice Now want to attend tonight's forum. They're driving up this afternoon." "The more support, the better," Marcus said. "I've never done anything like this before." "Standing up to a corporation? Dad, you've been doing that since Uncle Bobby got sick. The difference now is that you have something to offer besides anger." It was a perceptive observation that hit home. 3 years ago, grief-stricken and enraged, Marcus had confronted Blackwell with accusations but no solutions. Now he had created an alternative that directly challenged Atlantic Northeast's monopoly on clean water. Throughout the day, Marcus continued installing test systems in homes across Havenport, acutely aware of being watched. Twice he noticed the same dark sedan parked nearby, undoubtedly Atlantic Northeast security or legal representatives documenting his activities. By late afternoon, Marcus had finished his installations and returned to his apartment to prepare for the evening's confrontation. He was carefully packing his demonstration materials when a knock came at his door. Wary after the day's surveillance, he looked through the peephole before opening. Officer Mike Peterson stood in the hallway, looking uncomfortable in his Havenport police uniform. "Mike," Marcus greeted him cautiously. They'd known each other since high school. Mike had even dated Jennifer briefly during their senior year. "Marcus," the officer nodded. "Can I come in for a minute? Unofficial visit." Inside, Mike declined the offered seat, remaining standing with his hat in his hands. "I'm here as a friend, not a cop," he began. "You should know that Richard Blackwell met with the mayor this afternoon. There's talk about city ordinances regarding unlicensed water treatment devices." Marcus felt a chill. They're moving that fast. When you threaten someone's profit margin, they tend to respond quickly, Mike said grimly. The mayor's office is drafting emergency regulations requiring city certification for any water purification system used within municipal limits. Can they do that? Legally? Yes. Ethically? It's garbage, and everyone knows it. Mike replaced his hat. "Just wanted you to be prepared for tonight. They're playing hardball." After Mike left, Marcus called Jennifer to update her. She was already aware. Her university contacts had alerted her to the regulatory maneuver. It's a classic corporate tactic, she explained. Create barriers to entry through regulatory capture. We've seen it in pharmaceutical companies, telecoms, and now water utilities. So what do? We stick to the facts, Jennifer said firmly. Your system works. It's affordable. People need it. Don't let them drag you into legal technicalities or personal attacks. Marcus arrived at Havenport Town Hall 30 minutes before the scheduled forum. The parking lot was already filling up. A far bigger turnout than Atlantic Northeast's previous community meetings. Inside, the main assembly room had been arranged with a long table at the front for company representatives, facing rows of chairs for community members. Dorothy Wilson waved to him from the third row, where she'd saved him a seat. Beside her sat Sadie Johnson and several other members of the Community Action Group. Marcus made his way to them, noting the news cameras at the back of the room, not just from the local station, but from regional networks as well. Thomas's article got picked up by the Associated Press, Dorothy explained, following his gaze. Turns out David versus Goliath stories still have appeal, especially when they involve water rights. As more residents filed in, Marcus recognized faces from all over Havenport, customers, neighbors, parents from the elementary school. Director Williams arrived with several board members from Seaside Retirement Home. Even Frank Torres from Dawson's Hardware came, giving Marcus a thumbs up from across the room. At precisely 7 o'clock, the side door opened and Atlantic Northeast's delegation entered. Daniel Cooper led the procession, followed by two men in suits whom Marcus didn't recognize, likely attorneys. Richard Blackwell entered last, his expression neutral as he surveyed the packed room. Mayor Patricia Sanders took the podium first, her discomfort evident as she addressed the unexpectedly large crowd. Thank you all for coming to this community. Novorum, she began. Atlantic Northeast Water has requested this opportunity to address concerns about our municipal water supply and outline their ongoing improvement initiatives. A murmur ran through the audience, the mayor's phrasing subtly aligned her with the corporation rather than her constituents. Marcus noticed Councilmember George Harris nodding approvingly from his seat near the front, his long-standing alliance with Atlantic Northeast, well known in Havenport. Daniel Cooper approached the microphone next, his practiced corporate smile firmly in place. Good evening, friends and neighbors. We at Atlantic Northeast Water understand your concerns about water quality, and we're here to share our comprehensive plan for infrastructure improvements over the next 5 years. What followed was a well-rehearsed presentation filled with technical jargon and vague timelines. Cooper displayed glossy slides showing proposed treatment plant upgrades, each projected to cost millions and require years to implement. He discussed acceptable parameters and regulatory compliance without addressing the immediate health issues facing residents. Throughout his presentation, Cooper never once acknowledged the newspaper article or Marcus's filtration system. It was a deliberate strategy of omission, treating Marcus's innovation as beneath notice. When Cooper finally opened the floor for questions, dozens of hands shot up. Mayor Sanders, moderating the session, deliberately called on Councilmember Harris first. Thank you for this informative presentation, Harris began. Can you address the safety concerns about non-certified filtration devices being distributed within our community? The planted question hung in the air as Cooper feigned thoughtful concern. An excellent point. While we understand the desire for immediate solutions, uncertified devices pose serious health risks. They may remove some contaminants while concentrating others, potentially creating even more dangerous water conditions. Marcus felt anger rising at this deliberate mischaracterization, but Jennifer's advice echoed in his mind. Stick to the facts. Avoid personal attacks. He raised his hand, but the mayor pointedly ignored him, calling instead on another known company supporter. After 3 softball questions, Dorothy Wilson stood up without being recognized. "I'd like to hear from Marcus Allen about his filtration system that was featured in today's paper," she announced clearly, her former teacher's voice carrying authority that made Mayor Sanders hesitate. A chorus of agreement rose from the crowd. The mayor looked uncertainly toward Cooper, who in turn glanced at Blackwell. After a moment of silent communication, Blackwell gave a nearly imperceptible nod. "Mr. Allen is welcome to ask a question," the mayor conceded reluctantly. Marcus stood, aware of all eyes turning toward him. "Thank you, Mayor Sanders. My question is simple. Why does Atlantic Northeast charge residents for expensive filtration systems when the company is legally obligated to provide clean, safe water as part of their utility contract?" Applause broke out across the room. Cooper stepped forward, his corporate veneer showing cracks of irritation. "As I've explained, we're working on system-wide improvements. That will take years and cost millions," Marcus interrupted, "while people are getting sick now. My filtration system costs under $200 to build and removes 96% of the contaminants found in Havenport's water, contaminants that shouldn't be there in the first place." Cooper's expression hardened. "Your unverified, uncertified device has been laboratory tested at Eastern University's Environmental Science Department," Jennifer called out, standing near the back of the room. Heads turned as she continued, "I'm Dr. Jennifer Allen, and I supervise the testing personally. The results are conclusive and have been submitted for peer review." The unexpected introduction of credentialed scientific testimony clearly threw Cooper off his script. He looked again to Blackwell, who finally rose and approached the microphone. "Mr. Allen," Blackwell began, his tone reasonable and measured, "your intentions are commendable. However, water purification requires rigorous standards and ongoing monitoring that individual devices simply cannot provide. Then why do you sell individual filtration systems?" Sadie Johnson called out from her seat. "Our certified home solutions complement our municipal treatment," Blackwell started. "For $1,500 each," Marcus interrupted. "Unaffordable for most Havenport residents, especially seniors on fixed incomes or families already struggling with medical bills from water-related illnesses." A rumble of agreement passed through the crowd. Sensing the shifting dynamics, Thomas Green stood up near the news cameras. "Mr. Blackwell, is it true that you personally offered to buy Mr. Allen's design for $300,000 just yesterday?" The room fell silent. Blackwell's composure slipped momentarily before he regained control. "Atlantic Northeast regularly evaluates innovative technologies for potential acquisition. We expressed interest in Mr. Allen's concept for further development." "You didn't want to develop it," Marcus challenged. "You wanted to control it, price it out of reach, and maintain your monopoly on clean water in Havenport." Applause erupted again, louder this time. Mayor Sanders banged her gavel ineffectively as the forum slipped further from Atlantic Northeast's carefully planned script. Director Williams from Seaside Retirement Home stood next. "For the record, we've installed one of Mr. Allen's systems as a test case. In just 1 week, we've documented significant improvements in water quality and reduced maintenance costs. We've submitted formal requests to Atlantic Northeast for assistance countless times over the past year and received nothing but form letters in response." One by one, Havenport residents stood to share their experiences. Children with rashes, elderly neighbors with stomach ailments, homes with plumbing destroyed by contaminated water. Each testimony built upon the last, creating a damning portrait of corporate negligence and community suffering. Throughout it all, Marcus remained standing, a physical embodiment of resistance. Jennifer had made her way to his side, their public unity sending its own powerful message. When the testimonies finally subsided, Blackwell approached the microphone again, his corporate mask now firmly back in place. We appreciate all your comments and concerns. Atlantic Northeast takes customer satisfaction seriously and will review each issue raised tonight. That's not good enough, Marcus said, stepping forward. Havenport deserves clean water now, not promises for the future, until Atlantic Northeast fulfills its basic obligation. I'll continue providing my filtration systems to anyone who needs one. He turned to address the room directly. Starting tomorrow, I'll be holding workshops at the Maritime Heritage Center to teach people how to build these filters themselves. The design isn't proprietary. It belongs to the community. The parts are available at any hardware store, and the assembly takes less than 2 hours. The announcement triggered a standing ovation. Cameras flashed as residents cheered, many surging forward to shake Marcus's hand or pat his shoulder in support. In the midst of the commotion, Marcus noticed Richard Blackwell watching him from the side of the room, his expression unreadable. For a brief moment, their eyes met in silent acknowledgement of the battle lines drawn. Then Blackwell turned and exited through the side door, Cooper and the attorneys hurrying after him. As the forum dissolved into dozens of conversations, Jennifer leaned close to her father. "This isn't over," she cautioned. "They'll regroup and find another angle of attack." "I know," Marcus acknowledged, "but something fundamental changed tonight. They can't pretend the problem doesn't exist anymore." Dorothy Wilson joined them, her eyes bright with tears of pride. "You did what Joseph and Bobby would have done," she said, referring to Marcus's father and brother. "You stood up for what's right." As they left town hall together, surrounded by supportive neighbors, Marcus felt a weight lifting that he'd carried for years. The burden of powerlessness in the face of corporate might. He had found his voice not through anger or accusation, but through creation and community. The path ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges. Atlantic Northeast had resources, political connections, and legal leverage that a struggling plumber and could never match. But Marcus had something they couldn't buy or intimidate away: the trust of his community and the moral certainty of his cause. What neither Marcus nor anyone else at the forum could have anticipated was how quickly news of his confrontation with Atlantic Northeast would spread beyond Havenport, capturing attention far beyond their small coastal town. Attention that would soon arrive in the form of unexpected allies, with the power to transform his homemade filtration system into something with global implications. The first workshop at the Maritime Heritage Center drew over 100 people. Marcus arrived early to set up demonstration tables, bringing enough materials for 20 participants to build filters during the session. He'd expected to teach a handful of interested neighbors. Instead, he found a line stretching around the big building. Dorothy and Sadie had organized everything: sign-up sheets, staggered time slots, a volunteer system for those with building experience to help others. Frank Torres from Dawson's Hardware had donated supplies and arranged discounted bulk purchasing for additional materials. "We're going to need a bigger venue," Jennifer observed, surveying the crowd from beside her father. She'd rearranged her university schedule to stay in Havenport for the week, dividing her time between collecting water samples and supporting Marcus's workshops. As Marcus began his demonstration, he noticed unfamiliar faces in the audience, not just Havenport residents, but people from neighboring communities facing similar water issues. A woman near the front filmed the entire presentation on a professional camera, her press badge identifying her as a reporter from a national environmental news site. "Keep it simple," Marcus instructed, as participants gathered around tables with PVC pipes and filter materials. "The beauty of this system is its simplicity. No specialized tools, no proprietary parts. Everything can be replaced or repaired locally." He moved through the room, offering guidance where needed, struck by the diversity of people working together. Retirees alongside young parents, professionals next to trade workers, all united by the basic human need for clean water. By day's end, 20 new filtration systems were completed and dozens more people had signed up for future workshops. Marcus returned to Bayview Apartments exhausted but energized, only to find an envelope. Slipped under his door, another note without postmark or return address. This one contained a single sheet of paper with a printed message. Cease and desist all workshops and installations immediately. Municipal Code 47.355 prohibits installation of uncertified water treatment devices. Violations subject to fines, up to $1,000 per instance. Marcus called Jennifer immediately. They're threatening legal action, he explained after reading her the note. Some municipal code about uncertified devices. I've already heard, she replied. Mayor Sanders pushed it through as an emergency measure this morning. It's legally dubious but challenging. It would require resources we don't have. So we just stop? Marcus asked, frustration evident in his voice. No, we adapt. Jennifer's tone shifted to the determined one he remembered from her childhood debates. The code prohibits installation, but says nothing about education or assembly. People can build the systems in workshops and technically install them themselves. Loophole. Exactly. And I've been talking with my colleagues at Environmental Justice now. They're willing to provide legal support if Atlantic Northeast or the city tries to enforce the ordinance. The following morning, Marcus awoke to his phone, ringing. It was Thomas Green, his voice urgent. Have you seen the video? The reporter asked without preamble. What video? Someone filmed you at yesterday's workshop. It's gone viral overnight. Over 300,000 views already. As Havenport water hero is trending. Marcus sat up, fully awake now. That woman, with the camera. From EcoWatch, they did a feature on your filtration system, framing it as a David versus Goliath story. Atlantic Northeast's stock dropped 4 points when markets opened this morning. The implications sank in slowly. What had begun as a local conflict was expanding rapidly, drawing national attention to both Marcus's innovation and Atlantic Northeast's corporate misconduct. There's more. Thomas continued. A producer from National Public Radio called me this morning looking for your contact information. They want to interview you for their innovations segment. By midday, Marcus's phone was ringing constantly with interview requests and messages of support. He fielded calls between installations, struggling to manage the sudden attention while continuing his actual work. Dorothy and Sadie established themselves as unofficial gatekeepers, screening callers and organizing his rapidly filling schedule. That afternoon, as Marcus completed an installation at Maple Street Elementary, the school principal pulled him aside. We've had 3 different corporate donor offers this morning to fund filtration systems for every classroom, she explained. All because of that video. You've started something significant, Marcus. Back at the Maritime Heritage Center for the day's second workshop, Marcus found twice as many attendees as the morning session. Among them were 3 individuals who stood out immediately. 2 men and a woman in business casual attire, observing more than participating. When the workshop concluded, they approached him directly. Mr. Allen, the woman began, extending her hand. I'm Catherine Moore from the Global Water Foundation. These are my colleagues, William Harrison and Dr. James Foster. We'd like to discuss your filtration system. Marcus glanced at Jennifer, who had noticed the interaction and joined them. My daughter, Dr. Jennifer Allen, he introduced. She's been handling the scientific testing of the system. Catherine Moore nodded respectfully. We're familiar with your work, Dr. Allen. Your paper on contamination patterns in rural water systems was quite influential in our East African initiatives. Jennifer appeared momentarily surprised at the recognition. Thank you. That research, directly informed some of the testing protocols we've used on my father's system, which is precisely why we're here," William Harrison interjected. "Global Water Foundation specializes in implementing affordable water solutions in underserved communities worldwide. Your father's design has attributes that make it particularly suitable for our work." Marcus listened as they explained their organization, a non-profit funded by a consortium of philanthropists dedicated to addressing water insecurity globally. They had projects in over 40 countries, primarily focusing on areas where large-scale infrastructure was impractical or unaffordable. "We'd like to discuss adaptation and implementation of your system for international deployment," Catherine explained. "With appropriate compensation and recognition, of course." "I'm not looking to profit from this," Marcus said automatically. "The design is available to anyone who needs it." "Admirable," Dr. Foster noted, "but formal partnership would allow for quality control, continued refinement, and much broader distribution. We're not Atlantic Northeast. We don't want to buy your silence or shelf your innovation. We want to scale it responsibly." They proposed a meeting the following day to discuss details. As the Global Water Foundation representatives departed, Jennifer turned to Marcus with barely contained excitement. "Do you understand what just happened? GWF is legitimate, one of the most respected water-focused foundations in the world. They have the resources to take your system global." Marcus nodded, somewhat overwhelmed. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. They're interested, that's all." His caution was interrupted by another commotion at the entrance to the Heritage Center. Daniel Cooper had arrived with 2 Atlantic Northeast attorneys and was demanding to speak with Marcus. "Mr. Allen," Cooper called across the room, his corporate polish noticeably frayed. "We need to discuss your ongoing violations of municipal Code 47.355. Marcus approached calmly, conscious of workshop participants watching the confrontation. "These are educational workshops, Mr. Cooper. People learning about water filtration principles. You're encouraging illegal installations," one of the attorneys interjected. "The company will pursue all available legal remedies if these activities continue." Dorothy Wilson stepped forward unexpectedly. "Is that why you've stationed someone to photograph everyone entering the building? Intimidation tactics?" Cooper's expression confirmed Dorothy's accusation before he could deny it. "Atlantic Northeast has a responsibility to protect consumers from potentially harmful devices." "Harmful to your profit margin, you mean?" Sadie Johnson added, joining the confrontation. "The laboratory results are public record. Marcus's system improves water quality demonstrably." The back and forth continued until Jennifer intervened with professional authority. This discussion should occur with proper legal representation. Present, my father's activities are protected under educational exemptions to the municipal code, as our attorneys will happily explain in court if necessary. Though Jennifer hadn't actually secured legal representation yet, her confident assertion visibly unsettled Cooper and his attorneys. They retreated with promises of further action, leaving behind a palpable sense that Atlantic Northeast was losing control of the narrative. That evening, Marcus, Jennifer, Dorothy, and Sadie gathered at the Lobster Pot Diner to assess their situation. The restaurant owner had reserved a quiet corner booth and refused payment for their meals, a small gesture of support that illustrated the community's changing dynamics. "Atlantic Northeast is getting desperate," Jennifer observed. "Their stock is down, municipalities in 3 states are questioning their water management contracts, and social media is flooded with people asking why their communities can't have filtration systems like haven ports. The mayor called me personally," Dorothy added. "She's feeling pressure from constituents questioning her emergency ordinance. The next town council meeting is expected to be contentious." Marcus absorbed this information quietly. The past weeks had transformed him from a struggling plumber into an unlikely focal point for both community activism and corporate anxiety. The responsibilities weighed heavily. "What do we do about the Global Water Foundation offer?" he finally asked. "Explore it seriously," Jennifer advised. "They have the infrastructure to implement your design globally while fighting the legal battles Atlantic Northeast will inevitably pursue. But maintain control of the local implementation," Sadie added. "Havenport needs to remain your priority." Their strategy session was interrupted when Officer Mike Peterson entered the diner and headed directly to their booth. "Just got off shift," he said without preamble. "Thought you should know. Atlantic Northeast filed formal complaints against 5 homeowners who installed your filtration system, claiming code violations and potential health hazards." The escalation shocked even Jennifer. "They're targeting residents now. That's beyond the pale." "More than that," Mike continued. "The company got a temporary injunction against the Maritime Heritage Center for hosting your workshops, claiming improper use of the facility under its historic preservation charter." Marcus felt a surge of anger. "They're punishing the community for supporting us?" "It gets worse," Mike said grimly. "Blackwell convened an emergency board meeting this morning. A friend at the sheriff's department overheard one of their security contractors discussing plans to discredit you personally." "How?" Marcus asked. "They're digging into your past. The confrontation after Bobby's case was dismissed. Your financial troubles, anything they can use to paint you as unstable or unqualified." Jennifer's face hardened. "Standard corporate playbook. When you can't discredit the message, discredit the messenger." Marcus considered this sobering information. Atlantic Northeast was escalating beyond legal maneuvers into personal attacks. The corporation clearly viewed his simple filtration system as a genuine threat to their business model, a validation of its effectiveness, but also a warning of how far they might go to protect their interests. "The meeting with Global Water Foundation tomorrow just became more important," he acknowledged. "We need allies with resources." Back at his apartment that night, Marcus researched the foundation more thoroughly, finding impressive credentials and a genuine track record of water access projects worldwide. Their involvement could provide crucial legitimacy and protection. Early the next morning, Marcus's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Allen? This is Catherine Moore again. I apologize for calling so early, but there's been a development. Our team discovered litigation threats against your workshop participants overnight." "Yes, we just learned about that," Marcus confirmed. "We'd like to move our meeting forward and expand its scope," Catherine continued. "Global Water Foundation is prepared to offer legal protection to Havenport residents using your filtration system as part of our formal partnership agreement." "You can do that?" "Our legal team specializes in water rights cases. More importantly, we've arranged meetings with state regulatory officials to discuss emergency certification of your system on humanitarian grounds, bypassing the municipal restrictions." The offer was precisely what Havenport needed: protection from Atlantic Northeast's legal intimidation and a path toward legitimate certification of the filtration system. "There's one more thing," Catherine added. "Our board chair would like to attend our meeting. He's flying in specifically to discuss your innovation and its potential global applications." Marcus agreed to the adjusted meeting time, then called Jennifer with the update. She was equally surprised by the Foundation's escalated interest and resources. "This is moving incredibly fast," she noted. "Too fast?" Marcus asked, still cautious, despite the apparent good fortune. "Not necessarily. When something genuinely disruptive emerges, foundations like GWF often move quickly to secure implementation rights before commercial entities can establish control." By noon, Marcus had completed his morning installations and arrived at Havenport. Community Hospital's small conference room, neutral territory Catherine had arranged for their meeting. Jennifer joined him, bringing comprehensive testing data and documentation. They were escorted to a well-appointed meeting room where Catherine, Moore and William Harrison waited alongside an older man with silver hair and an air of quiet authority. Marcus and Dr. Jennifer Allen. Catherine began formal introductions. This is Edward Carmichael, chair of the Global Water Foundation Board and founder of Carmichael Innovations. The name triggered immediate recognition for Jennifer. Carmichael Innovations developed the solar-powered well systems used throughout rural Africa, she said, with obvious respect. Edward Carmichael smiled warmly. A lifetime ago. Now I focus on identifying and supporting innovations like your father's, elegant solutions to fundamental problems. The meeting progressed with detailed discussions of Marcus's filtration design, potential improvements for different environments, and implementation logistics. What began as a tentative exploration quickly evolved into concrete planning as the Foundation representatives demonstrated genuine expertise and commitment. We envision a two-track approach, Carmichael explained. Local implementation here, in Havenport, with full legal support and simultaneous adaptation for international deployment, beginning with pilot programs in 3 countries facing similar contamination profiles. By meeting's end, they had outlined a comprehensive partnership agreement. Global Water Foundation would provide legal protection for Havenport users, pursue expedited certification through state channels, and establish a development fund to refine the system for various environmental conditions. Marcus would receive recognition as the inventor and a reasonable royalty on international implementations. Funds he immediately proposed directing toward water quality research at Jennifer's university. As they prepared to leave, Edward Carmichael pulled Marcus aside. "There's one additional matter we'd like to discuss," he said quietly. "Catherine has arranged transportation to take us to your apartment. We have something to show you." Marcus exchanged glances with Jennifer, who nodded encouragingly. Whatever was coming next would fundamentally change their fight against Atlantic, Northeast Water, and Marcus's life as a struggling plumber who had dared to challenge a corporation by simply creating a better solution. Outside the hospital, a line of 5 black limousines waited. Marcus paused, momentarily disoriented by the unexpected sight. "We brought our full team," Catherine explained. "Legal advisors, engineers, implementation specialists, and communications experts. Edward believes in comprehensive approaches." As they approached the vehicles, Jennifer whispered to her father, "I've never been in a limousine before." "Me neither," Marcus admitted, feeling decidedly out of place in his work clothes as they were ushered into the lead vehicle. The short drive to Bayview Apartments created a surreal procession through Havenport's modest streets. Neighbors stared as the unlikely convoy wound through the working-class neighborhood and parked outside Marcus's building. "I should warn you it's not much," Marcus said as he led the group up 3 flights of stairs to his apartment. Edward Carmichael smiled. "I started Carmichael Innovations in a garage smaller than most modern bathrooms. The size of the workspace has little correlation with the significance of the work." Inside the apartment, Marcus's filtration prototypes occupied most of the available space, each iteration labeled and documented. Catherine's team spread out, examining the systems with professional interest, while Edward moved directly to the kitchen table where Marcus's original sketches and notes were organized in careful stacks. "These initial concepts," Edward said, leafing through the earliest drawings, "they show remarkable intuition about flow dynamics. You never completed your engineering degree?" 2 years at community college, Marcus confirmed. "Had to drop out when my father got sick." Edward nodded thoughtfully. Formal education is just one path to understanding. Sometimes direct problem-solving creates more practical innovations than theoretical approaches. While the foundation team examined his work, Catherine guided Marcus and Jennifer to the small living area. "We've conducted preliminary market analysis based on the viral video," she explained. "The potential impact is substantial, both humanitarian and commercial." "I don't care about commercial potential," Marcus insisted. "I just want people to have clean water." "A laudable position," Edward commented, joining them. "But practical implementation requires sustainable models. Pure philanthropy can help hundreds or thousands. Properly structured enterprises can help millions." Their discussion was interrupted by a commotion outside. Through the window, Marcus saw Richard Blackwell emerging from a black SUV, accompanied by Daniel Cooper and a woman he didn't recognize. "What's he doing here?" Jennifer asked, moving beside her father at the window. "I suspect he's discovered our presence," Edward said calmly. "Corporate intelligence moves quickly when stock prices are affected." Minutes later, a firm knock came at the apartment door. Marcus opened it to find Blackwell standing in the hallway, his corporate polish firmly in place, despite the obvious tension in his posture. "Mr. Allen," he began, then stopped as he noticed Edward Carmichael behind Marcus. "Edward, I should have known you'd be involved in this." "Richard," Edward nodded with cordial familiarity. "It's been what? The Copenhagen Water Summit. 3 years ago? 4, Blackwell corrected. "Your foundation opposed our acquisition of Nordic Aqua Systems rather publicly, as I recall. The exchange revealed a history between the two men that extended well beyond Havenport's water crisis." Marcus stepped aside, allowing Blackwell and his associates to enter the increasingly crowded apartment. The contrast was striking. Atlantic, Northeast's executives in their tailored suits, facing Global Water Foundation's team of practical experts in business casual attire. "I assume you're here about Marcus's filtration system?" Edward said, dispensing with pretense. Blackwell nodded. "Atlantic Northeast is prepared to revise our previous offer substantially, $750,000 plus ongoing consultation fees for Mr. Allen as we develop the technology." The increased amount hung in the air. Marcus felt a momentary dizziness at the figure, enough money to completely transform his life, pay off every debt, secure his retirement, and help Jennifer with her student loans. Plus immediate withdrawal of all complaints against Havenport residents, the woman with Blackwell added, introducing herself as Atlantic Northeast's chief legal counsel, and cessation of regulatory actions through municipal channels. "A generous revision," Edward acknowledged, his tone neutral. "May I ask what prompted the increase?" "Market realities," Blackwell replied tersely. "The situation has evolved." "Indeed it has," Catherine interjected. "Global Water Foundation has already secured preliminary approval for emergency certification of Marcus's system through the State Environmental Agency, bypassing municipal restrictions. The governor's office was particularly interested once they understood the public health implications." Blackwell's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see. Then perhaps we should discuss a collaborative approach between Atlantic Northeast and the Foundation." Edward shook his head. "I don't believe our organizational values align sufficiently for meaningful collaboration, Richard." The room fell silent. As the subtext became clear, this was no longer a negotiation between a powerful corporation and a vulnerable individual. With Global Water Foundation's involvement, the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. Marcus cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwell, I declined your original offer because it wouldn't help the people of Havenport. Has anything about your company's approach to the contamination changed?" "We've accelerated our infrastructure improvement timeline," Cooper volunteered quickly, "and established a community assistance fund for affected residents." "Since when?" Jennifer challenged. The board approved it yesterday, Blackwell admitted, a $5 million commitment. Marcus exchanged glances with Edward, who gave a subtle nod of encouragement. Too little, too late, Marcus said finally. I'm working with the Global Water Foundation now. We've already established a path forward that prioritizes the community's immediate needs while developing the system for broader implementation. Blackwell's professional facade cracked slightly. Marcus, be reasonable. Atlantic Northeast can offer resources and reach that a non-profit simply can't match. Maybe so, Marcus acknowledged, but you've demonstrated repeatedly that profit matters more than people. I'll take my chances with the foundation. The rejection hung heavily in the cramped apartment. Blackwell studied Marcus for a long moment before turning to Edward. You've found yourself a principled partner, Edward. I hope he understands that principles rarely pay dividends in the real world. On the contrary, Edward replied evenly. In my experience, principled innovation is the only kind that creates lasting value. After Atlantic Northeast's delegation departed, the atmosphere in the apartment lightened considerably. Catherine's team resumed their examination of Marcus's prototypes, while Edward explained his personal interest in the project. Water equity has been my focus since selling Carmichael Innovations, he explained. When I saw the viral video of your workshop, I recognized something special, not just in the technical design, which is elegantly practical, but in your approach to sharing knowledge rather than hoarding it. A team member interrupted with questions about specific design elements, and Marcus spent the next hour providing detailed explanations of his filtration methods. Jennifer participated actively, adding scientific context to her father's practical knowledge, their complementary expertise creating a comprehensive picture. As evening approached, Edward gathered his team for a final discussion. We need to move quickly, he advised. Atlantic Northeast's revised offer suggests they're preparing a major counter-move. What kind of counter-move? Marcus asked. Most likely, they'll announce their own innovative, affordable filtration system, Catherine predicted. Possibly with superficial differences from yours, but essentially the same concept. They'll claim independent development and leverage their corporate resources to dominate the narrative. Can they do that? Marcus asked, looking to Jennifer. Patent law is complicated, she replied. Your decision to make the design publicly available protected it from direct appropriation, but also limited certain legal protections. Edward nodded, which is why we need to establish clear provenance and implementation history immediately. Catherine's team will document everything while our legal department prepares formal partnership agreements. As the Foundation representatives prepared to leave, Edward took Marcus aside. Tomorrow morning, we'll hold a press conference at the Maritime Heritage Center, assuming the temporary injunction doesn't prevent it. The injunction only prohibits workshops, Jennifer clarified, joining them. A press event should be permissible, especially with proper legal representation present. Excellent, Edward said. We'll announce our partnership and outline immediate steps for Havenport, including legal defense for residents, expedited state certification for your system, and a community implementation fund to provide filtration systems to those most vulnerable. Marcus felt momentarily overwhelmed by the rapid developments. Just weeks ago, he'd been a struggling plumber with mounting debts and a strained relationship with his daughter. Now, he stood at the center of a corporate and philanthropic battle, with far-reaching implications. This is really happening, he said quietly to Jennifer as the Foundation team filed out. She squeezed his shoulder. You deserve this, Dad. You saw a problem, and instead of just complaining, you created a solution. After everyone had gone, Marcus stood alone in his apartment, surveying the space that had transformed from a humble dwelling to the birthplace of an innovation now drawing national attention. His phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy. Evening news says Atlantic Northeast stock down 11% today. Something big happening? Marcus smiled as he typed his reply. Tell you tomorrow. Press conference at the Maritime Heritage Center, 10 a.m. Spread the word. The next morning dawned clear and cool, a perfect Maine spring day. Marcus arrived at the Heritage Center early to find a crowd already gathering. Not just Havenport residents, but news crews from Portland, Boston, even a network affiliate from New York. Dorothy and Sadie had organized local supporters, many, wearing blue ribbons symbolizing clean water. Frank Torres had closed Dawson's Hardware for the morning so his employees could attend. Director Williams brought a delegation from Seaside Retirement Home, including several elderly residents who had experienced health improvements since installing Marcus's filtration system. Jennifer met her father at the side entrance, looking professional in a blazer and carrying a folder of documentation. Edward just called. The limousines are 5 minutes out. The governor's office sent a representative too. Marcus nodded, smoothing his one good shirt nervously. Did you see the crowd? It's not just locals, Jennifer confirmed. There are environmental activists, public health advocates, and representatives from at least 3 other communities with water contamination issues. Inside, Catherine's team had transformed the Heritage Center's main hall into a proper press venue with a podium, seating for media, and professional lighting. Marcus peeked through the door, stomach tightening at the sight of so many cameras and reporters. I'm not good at public speaking, he admitted to Jennifer. She smiled encouragingly. Just talk about why you created the system, the technical details, the community need. Be yourself. That's what got us here. Minutes later, the distinctive procession of black limousines arrived. Edward Carmichael emerged from the lead vehicle, accompanied by his core team and several individuals Marcus didn't recognize. Presumably the legal experts and government representatives Jennifer had mentioned. As they prepared to enter, a commotion arose from the street. Richard Blackwell had arrived with a full corporate entourage, clearly intent on observing the proceedings. The crowd parted reluctantly, murmurs of disapproval following the Atlantic Northeast delegation as they made their way toward the entrance. Inside, Edward greeted Marcus warmly. Ready to change the world, Mr. Allen. Just Havenport would be enough, Marcus replied honestly. Change starts locally, Edward nodded. But what you've created has global implications. The press conference began with Catherine Moore introducing the Global Water Foundation and explaining their mission of water equity. She outlined the crisis in Havenport with precise data and devastating clarity, placing Atlantic Northeast's negligence in stark relief without ever directly naming the company. Next, Jennifer presented the scientific findings, her professional expertise lending credibility to claims about the filtration system's effectiveness. She referenced peer-reviewed methodologies and comparative studies, establishing beyond doubt that Marcus's innovation genuinely improved water quality where Atlantic Northeast's treatment had failed. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he approached the podium with trepidation that melted away as he focused on the familiar faces in the crowd. Dorothy, Sadie, Frank, and other Havenport residents who had supported him from the beginning. I'm not a scientist or a businessman, he began simply. I'm a plumber who got tired of seeing my neighbors get sick from contaminated water they couldn't afford to filter, so I built something that works, using parts anyone can find at a hardware store for less than $200. The straightforward explanation resonated with the audience. Marcus continued, explaining the basic principles behind his system without technical jargon, demonstrating with a working model how the multi-stage filtration addressed Havenport's specific contamination profile. This wasn't about making money or challenging corporations, he concluded. It was about solving a problem that needed solving. Clean water shouldn't be a luxury only some can afford. It's a basic human right. The applause was immediate and sustained. When it finally subsided, Edward Carmichael took the podium to announce the formal partnership between Marcus Allen and the Global Water Foundation. He outlined a comprehensive plan that balanced local needs with global potential: immediate legal protection for Havenport residents, expedited state certification, community implementation programs, and adaptation of the design for international deployment. Most importantly, Edward emphasized, this technology will remain affordable and accessible. Marcus Allen created this solution to help people, not to profit from their necessity. Global Water Foundation shares that commitment. As questions from reporters followed, Marcus noticed Blackwell standing at the back of the hall, watching with an unreadable expression. Their eyes met briefly across the crowded room, a silent acknowledgement of the changed power dynamic between them. After the formal proceedings concluded, Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers and supporters. Among them was Officer Mike Peterson, who shook his hand vigorously. "You did it, Marcus," Mike said, genuine admiration in his voice. "The mayor's already walking back that emergency ordinance." Councilmember Harris suddenly remembered a previous engagement and skipped today's session. The political winds are shifting fast. Thomas Green approached next, digital recorder in hand. "From local story to national headline in less than a month," the reporter observed. "How does it feel?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Surreal," he admitted. "But right, like this is what I was supposed to do all along." As the crowd gradually dispersed, Marcus found himself standing with Jennifer, Dorothy, and Sadie, the core supporters who had believed in him from the beginning. They watched together as Edward's team loaded equipment into the limousines. "What happens next?" Dorothy asked. "Implementation," Jennifer answered. "The foundation will establish a local manufacturing facility to produce standardized versions of Dad's system. They're hiring from within the community, creating jobs while solving the water crisis." "And you'll be running it," Marcus added, pride evident in his voice. "Lead scientist for the Havenport project." Jennifer nodded, still seeming somewhat amazed by the opportunity. "I never expected my research to bring me back home permanently. Life takes unexpected turns." As the afternoon sun slanted through the Heritage Center windows, Marcus reflected on the extraordinary journey from his first crude prototype to this moment of triumph. The struggling plumber with mounting debts and a broken family relationship had found purpose, reconciliation, and a platform to help others through practical innovation. Outside, the 5 black limousines prepared to depart, no longer symbols of inaccessible wealth, but vehicles for change, carrying the plans that would transform both Havenport and countless communities beyond. Marcus watched them pull away, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new possibilities that had seemed impossible just months before. The water would flow clean again in Havenport, and so would justice. Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss this. Just click to watch, and don't forget to subscribe. It would mean a lot.